I helped him rise up, invested money in his business, believed we were friends. But he stole everything, set me up, and left me penniless. He thought he had me wrapped around his finger, but I made him destroy his own life. I first met Eric 12 years ago at Henderson and Associates. We were both entry-level marketing associates, sharing a cramped office space with outdated computers and dreams much bigger than our paychecks. Eric was different from the start, ambitious, charismatic, always talking about his vision of owning a high-end restaurant in downtown Chicago. Not just any restaurant, James, he'd say, his eyes lighting up during our lunch breaks. A place where food meets art. Where every dish tells a story. Over the years, we climbed the corporate ladder together. Coffee runs turned into happy hours, which evolved into weekend fishing trips and holiday dinners with each other's families. I was there when his father passed away. He stood beside me at my sister's wedding. Our friendship was forged through late nights, shared victories, and mutual support through life's hardships. When Eric turned 40, something changed. He became restless, dissatisfied with corporate life. "I'm running out of time, James," he confided one evening over beers at our regular spot. "If I don't take the leap now, I never will." 3 months later, he walked into my office with a business plan and a location scouted in River North, prime real estate with foot traffic that restaurant owners would kill for. "I need a partner I can trust," he said, sliding the folder across my desk. "Someone who believes in me." I studied the numbers for weeks. The investment required was substantial, $50,000. It represented my entire savings, money I'd been setting aside for a down payment on a house. But the projections looked solid, and more importantly, this was Eric. My friend. My brother in all but blood. "I'm in," I told him, writing the check that would change everything. "Partners." He hugged me, emotion in his eyes. "Silent partner, right? You're keeping your job here?" "Yeah, for now at least. Let's see how it goes first." We shook hands, and I felt a surge of excitement. Not just about the potential return on investment, but about helping my friend achieve his dream. The restaurant, Ember, opened 4 months later. The concept was brilliant, modern American cuisine with global influences, in a space that balanced industrial chic with warm, inviting elements. Eric was in his element as the face of the business, charming customers and critics alike. From day one, the place was packed. Reservations became increasingly difficult to secure. Food bloggers raved about the innovative menu. A prominent critic from the Chicago Tribune awarded it 4 stars, praising the bold vision and flawless execution. I kept my distance professionally, visiting only as a customer. Eric insisted this was best. I had my career, and he needed to establish himself as the sole creative force behind Ember. I understood his reasoning, though sometimes I felt a twinge of disappointment when I'd overhear him telling the story of how he built the place from nothing, conveniently omitting my contribution. "It's all about the narrative," he explained when I mentioned it. "People want to believe in the struggling chef who bet everything on his dream. It's better marketing." Again, I understood. Business was business. 6 months passed. The restaurant continued to thrive, but I hadn't seen a penny of return on my investment. Each time I brought it up, Eric had a plausible explanation. "We're reinvesting in growth," he'd say. "Building our wine collection. Upgrading kitchen equipment. Or, winter is slow season. We need to maintain cash reserves. Then, we're scouting a second location. This is when we should be doubling down, not pulling profits." I trusted him. Until the day I ran into Casey, an old college friend who happened to be a commercial real estate agent. "Your place is killing it," she said over coffee. "Eric just signed the lease on that space in Wicker Park. Premium location, must have cost a fortune." I maintained my smile, nodding as if I knew all about it. But I didn't. This was the first I'd heard of a second location. That evening, I called Eric. Wicker Park. When were you going to tell me? A pause. I was waiting for the right time. It's complicated, James. Complicated how? We're partners. These are decisions we make together. Another pause, longer this time. Look, let's meet tomorrow. I'll explain everything. But the next day, Eric cancelled. And the day after. Each time with a reasonable excuse: vendor issues, staff emergencies, personal matters. My unease grew into suspicion. I requested copies of the financial statements, tax filings, anything that would give me insight into where my money had gone. Of course, Eric said. Let me gather everything. Days turned into weeks. The documents never materialized. I decided to investigate on my own. Through a mutual connection, I arranged a meeting with Ember's accountant, a nervous young man named Tyler who clearly felt caught in the middle. I thought you knew, he said, avoiding my eyes as he slid a folder across the table. Your name isn't on any of the official paperwork. The business is registered solely to Eric Matthews. There's no record of your investment. I felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath me. The folder contained incorporation documents, tax filings, bank statements, all in Eric's name alone. According to the official record, I didn't exist. Even worse, I discovered that Eric had used my initial investment as collateral for additional loans, effectively leveraging my money to secure funding I knew nothing about. The restaurant was now part of a complex web of businesses and properties, all owned exclusively by the man I had considered my closest friend. With hands that barely cooperated, I dialed Eric's number. Did you deceive me? I asked when he answered, my voice unnaturally calm. A brief hesitation. I wouldn't put it that way. How would you put it? Business involves risk, James. You knew that going in. Risk is different from fraud, Eric. He sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. Look, the restaurant industry is complicated. You weren't ready for the realities of it. I made executive decisions. Executive decisions? My voice finally betrayed my anger. You stole from me. I built something successful, he countered coolly. If you want to see it that way, fine. But this is business, not friendship hour. You took a risk, and it didn't work out for you. That's life. The call ended. I sat in my car for hours, replaying 12 years of friendship in my mind, searching for signs I had missed. Had he always been this person, or had success transformed him? It didn't matter now. What mattered was what came next. I didn't rage. I didn't threaten. Instead, I channeled my pain into methodical investigation. If Eric thought I would simply accept defeat, he had severely misjudged me. I hired a private investigator, expensive, but worth every penny. Together, we uncovered the full extent of Eric's operation. He hadn't just misappropriated my investment, he'd built his empire on fraudulent practices. The PI discovered that Eric had falsified revenue reports to secure loans from multiple banks. He'd been underreporting cash transactions to evade taxes. His payroll showed discrepancies suggesting employees were being paid under the table. And most recently, he'd leveraged the original restaurant as collateral for the Wicker Park location, taking on debt he couldn't possibly service if business slowed even slightly. Most damning of all, we learned that Eric no longer fully owned Ember. Facing cash flow problems despite the restaurant's apparent success, he'd taken on a silent investor, a businessman named Victor Kaplan with a reputation for dealing harshly with those who couldn't meet their obligations. Eric had signed over 60% of the business in exchange for a cash injection, but was already behind on the terms of their agreement. Eric was juggling too many balls, and they were all about to come crashing down. I could have confronted him immediately, but that would have given him time to cover his tracks. Instead, I waited, compiling evidence, building an airtight case. When tax season approached, I anonymously submitted a detailed report to the IRS, complete with documentation of Eric's tax evasion schemes. I sent similar packages to the Department of Labor regarding worker compensation violations, and to the banks he had defrauded with falsified loan applications. Then I waited. The first domino fell 3 weeks later. IRS agents arrived at Ember during the dinner rush, ordering everyone out and placing a seizure notice on the door. The Chicago Tribune, which had once praised Eric's culinary vision, now ran a front-page story on the investigation into his business practices. Eric called me that night, panic evident in his voice. "James, I need your help. There's been a misunderstanding with the tax people. If I can't open the restaurant, I can't make payments to Victor, and he's not a patient man." "That sounds difficult," I replied evenly. "Difficult? It's a disaster. I need cash, immediately. I know things got complicated between us, but you're the only one I can turn to. Why would I help you after what you did?" A beat of silence. "You did this, didn't you? You reported me." "I simply made sure the appropriate authorities had accurate information." His voice turned venomous. "You have no idea what you've done. When Victor comes for his money, that's a problem between you and Victor." I hung up, blocking his number immediately after. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as Eric's world collapsed. The second location in Wicker Park, not yet opened, was reclaimed by the property owner. The banks called in their loans. The reputation he'd built crumbled as former employees came forward with stories of mistreatment and wage theft. Federal charges for tax evasion and bank fraud were filed. Eric was arrested outside his apartment building, the moment captured by local news cameras. His face, once confident and charming, now showed the strain of a man whose decisions had finally caught up with him. I felt no joy watching his downfall, only a hollow sense of justice served. My $50,000 was gone, but the price Eric paid was far higher. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after Eric's arrest, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. A well-dressed man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and cold eyes that evaluated everything they saw. "James Mercer," he asked, not waiting for my invitation before stepping into my living room. "Who's asking?" "Victor Kaplan." He handed me a business card with nothing but his name embossed in silver. "I believe we have a mutual acquaintance." My mouth went dry. I knew exactly who he was, the silent investor who had purchased majority control of Ember. The man Eric had been terrified of disappointing. "I don't have any business with you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Victor smiled thinly. "I disagree. You see, I've lost a significant investment because of recent events. And I've learned through my sources that those events were set in motion by you." Eric broke the law. I simply reported it. Yes, and quite thoroughly. He studied me with something resembling respect. It was well executed. Professional, even. Which is why I'm here with an opportunity rather than a complaint. I'm not interested. You haven't heard my offer. Victor glanced around my modest apartment. "A man with your attention to detail, your patience, these are valuable qualities in my line of work. The restaurant industry is full of opportunities for someone who understands how leverage works." I realized with a chill what he was suggesting. I'm not like Eric. Or you. No. Victor raised an eyebrow. You methodically destroyed a man who betrayed you. We're not so different. I exposed illegal activities. That's all. Call it what you like. He placed a business card on my coffee table. When you're ready to turn your talents into something more profitable than revenge, call me. After he left, I stared at the card for a long time before finally dropping it into the trash. But the encounter left me unsettled. Had my actions revealed something about myself I hadn't wanted to see? Was there really such a fine line between justice and vengeance? Sometimes I drive past Ember now, closed and empty, a "for lease" sign in the window. I think about the dreams we both had, and how differently things might have turned out had greed not corrupted our friendship. The last time I saw Eric was at his preliminary hearing. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as he entered in handcuffs, the orange jumpsuit hanging loosely on his frame. He'd lost weight, and the confident swagger was gone from his step. He didn't notice me at first. When he finally did, during a pause in proceedings, our eyes locked across the room. I expected hatred, anger, perhaps even a threat. Instead, I saw something that haunts me still: recognition. Not of me specifically, but of what I'd become, a mirror image of his own calculating ruthlessness. In that moment, I wondered which of us had truly lost more. Eric is still awaiting trial, facing years in prison. I've moved on, or at least I've tried to. I started rebuilding my savings. The house I wanted will have to wait a while longer. I changed jobs, seeking a fresh start away from the memories of our shared past at Henderson and Associates. Last month, I received a letter from him, handwritten, postmarked from the county detention center. For days, it sat unopened on my kitchen counter. When I finally gathered the courage to read it, it contained just 3 sentences. "I never thought you had it in you. Turns out we're more alike than either of us wanted to admit. Maybe that's why we were friends in the first place." Those words have echoed in my mind ever since. Was he right? Had he simply recognized something in me that I hadn't seen in myself, a capacity for the same cold calculation he had employed against me? People ask if I regret what I did, exposing him that way. I tell them no. But in the quiet moments, I wonder if revenge has given me what I thought it would. The satisfaction I feel is tempered by the realization that I've lost something too: faith in people, perhaps. Or maybe just the naive belief that friendship always transcends self-interest. Sometimes I take out the business card I retrieved from the trash, turning it over in my fingers, considering Victor's offer. The temptation isn't about money, it's about embracing what Eric's betrayal awakened in me. A talent for strategic thinking. A willingness to play the long game. A capacity for patience in pursuit of a goal. I haven't called the number yet. But I haven't destroyed the card either. Either way, Eric learned a valuable lesson: betrayal cuts both ways. And sometimes, the student becomes the master. But mastery comes with its own price, one I'm still trying to determine if I'm willing to pay.